Hey y'all, this is James, one of your fellow KPG dance videographers. So today we are going to be talking about the most important skill you can master as a future dance videographer, which in my opinion is camera movement. We're going to go over everything about camera movement and how, as a videographer, you can have so much of an impact over one of these dance covers. So whether you're just starting off with an iPhone or whether you are looking to make cinematic dance covers of your own, we are going to discuss useful tips and tricks that will be helpful for you. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So actually, before we begin talking about how we film a dance cover in particular, I want to start by going over the role of us as dance videographers in the first place. Because let's be real here, it's really damn hard to film an engaging and awesome dance cover with just a tripod. Thank goodness that's not the case, because otherwise guys, I would not have this job here. But back to the topic at hand. I think that the best way I could summarize it is that you as a videographer are the bridge between the audience and the dancers. One part of your job is to do justice to the dancers and honor the immense amount of time and effort they put into preparing that awesome dance cover. This means things like not cutting people out of the frame or making sure to transition well between your shots. But at the same exact time, you have to present the dance in a way that is engaging to the audience as well. We can sit here all day long watching dance practice videos of our favorite K-pop artists. From just the dancer's perspective, they would accomplish everything you would need. They show everyone in the frame, they show who is the center at all times, and they don't obtrude the dance in any way. But you know that there's a huge difference between these dance practice videos and the final performance video that these K-pop groups release. Part of the reason why we love these finalized music videos is, well, just because they use a lot of camera and editing techniques to really enhance the dance that we're seeing. And so for the rest of this video, I'm going to approach this topic of camera movement exactly from that perspective. How we create a video that is the best viewing experience for both dancers and our audience. I'm going to first discuss camera movement during the cuts we take on 3 separate levels of camera movement. Afterwards, we'll transition towards how we make in-camera transitions between cuts and how, in general, we can prepare and make a plan for what camera movements and transitions we make before we even begin filming. So that said, sit back guys, go get a drink and some popcorn, and let's now get started about talking for dance videos. So, the most basic level of camera movement we can incorporate into our videos is a wide shot. Now don't get me wrong here, you can do so much with a wide shot. Many dance studios such as 1 Million or Steezy rely heavily on these continuous wide shots that contain every dancer at every moment. Some of our other KPG dance videographers as well, such as Anthony, utilize wide shots extensively and add a lot of camera movement in the editing process. So in short, never underestimate the value of a wide shot. I highly suggest that for every video you do, you should be looking to film at least one wide shot, just in case you need it. Now, I like to call this level of camera movement lighting along center for a couple of reasons. With a wide shot, you mainly want to always be along the center line. The only thing that you should be doing is moving up and down the center line depending on where the dance formation is or how the dance formation and the blocking changes over time. The overall goal is to get everyone within the shot and everyone centered relative to the camera frame. One aspect of this means that you simply mirror the direction of the center. If the center is walking towards the camera, you simply just walk backwards to make sure that the shot is wide enough to get everyone. Similar logic applies for the other case. The center is walking away from the camera, you simply walk forwards, towards the center. So let's take a look at this concept with a couple of examples. Let's first watch this introduction to New Jeans' Hype Boy. Let me know what you think. Alright, that was okay, truth be told. There's nothing really wrong with that video. But let's contrast that video with this introduction of the same song. So yes, there are a lot of things that are different between these two videos, but I want you to ask yourself, what difference had the largest effect on you as an audience? I bet it's really not the higher camera quality or the better colors. I know this because if I had used the best camera in the world for both of these shots, the second one would still look way better than the first. And so I would argue that the biggest difference is in the camera motion. Right, in the second video, all we did is literally follow the dancers as they walked towards the camera. And if you look very closely, everything like the location, the lighting, the dancers, and the choreography otherwise is all the same. But you can see how as an audience, this has made us much more inverse in the choreography. And so in general, this is a concept that I really want you guys to internalize. Motion allows us to feel more connected to and immersed in the visuals. And that's something I think you should utilize the most as a videographer. Especially in this first skill level camera movement, there's actually not that much we are changing as a videographer. Literally, it's just walking back and forth. And yet, we still can have a tremendous impact on what we see through the viewing experience. Now, I think one of the natural questions that arises then is, what do we do when the dancers aren't necessarily moving back and forth? What do we do if they are all staying at the same depth away from the camera? In this case, I would say that you have two separate options. First, you could just stay still there. Again, there's nothing wrong with letting the dance speak for itself. And worst comes worst, at the end of the day, the editor can just add a zoom in or a zoom out during the editing process. However, I think that we could still do a little better than that. Another option that we have is that we can continue moving back and forth during the dance. I'm a huge proponent of this because I believe that, there should always be some sort of action during a cut, something that captures the attention of the audience. And so, when the dancers aren't moving as much, that's the best time for you to add some slight and, very aesthetic camera movement. That way, we have something as an audience to be captivated by. Now, when we are looking to move back and forth between the cuts, something that I always look for is changing directions according to the beat, the lyric, or some other part of the song. Part of adding aesthetic camera movement is to have it be ordered in some fashion. That way it makes sense to the audience how and when you're adding that camera movement. By making these backwards and forwards movements that align well with the beat of the song, for example, it makes the movement somewhat ordered rather than just, sort of randomly added or some random movement at the end. Let's take a look at this example through a 1 million studio dance cover. Again, we can see here that the dancers aren't moving in terms of their depth. They're dancing, absolutely of course, but they're mainly doing that in the same blocking and same position. But when we take a closer look at when the camera moves, it aligns very well with the beats and the lyric of the song. Please excuse my, horrible singing, but you could definitely hear in the song there are these triads of love, la la love, right? And so one of the cool things that I think the camera person did here is that they changed direction at that third beat. You'll hear it when the song says, love, incomplete, the direction will change. Take a look again at this and I will point out the directional changes to you this time. If there's anything that we can take away from this example, it's just that these forward and backward movements really work well when they are structured in some way. Most of the time, I think that the best way to do this is somehow, to align these directional movements with the song itself, whether it's just, following the lyrics, the beat, or something else. However, again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with just staying still. And if that's something that you really prefer and something that you want to integrate into your style as a videographer, feel free to, Alright, so another part of this movement along the center is noticing changes in blocking. Mainly what I mean by this is when the formation becomes wider or when the formation becomes narrower. Let's take a look at this cover of Hype Boy to put this into perspective. So right as the second chorus starts, you can see how everyone but the center moves out and away from the center line. To put it simply, the formation just gets wider, right? And so to best convey that movement to the audience, the camera person will simply move out of the way from the dancers. So let's watch that again with that in mind. Did you guys catch it this time? It's very interesting, isn't it? However, I think that this is a great example because literally right after that, we get to see the exact opposite case. Let's continue watching a little bit more. Right, so when we watch this next part of the video, we can see how the formation gets closer together, or in other words, it gets narrower. This is the opposite case. Because everyone is getting closer together, the camera person moves inward. Isn't that awesome, guys? I don't know about you, but I always just get fascinated to see how these, just slight and simple camera movements can have a huge impact on our viewing experience. I don't know, it just gets me excited, I guess. Anyways, as the last part to this section, I just want to talk about what to do when the dancers move horizontally. In many of the cases, the choreography of a dance will move either to your left or to your right. Sometimes, when the movement is very brief or very small, you can just get away with just, kind of staying on that center line. However, when the dancers stay all way in one direction for a while, or, they move very drastically in one direction very quickly, you don't want to just stay at that old center line. Not only does it make for a bad viewing experience, but it really doesn't do justice to any of the horizontal movement the dancers are making in that moment. And so when the dancers are moving like left or right for a long while or very quickly, we want to make sure to track that as well. Really, the concept is, behind this is very similar to all the things that we mentioned earlier. But again, let's just watch an example of that to really solidify that concept. Anyways, at the end of the day, these are relatively simple and easy camera movements that you can make as a videographer. And really, all it takes to do this movement is just watching and learning the choreography ahead of time. We'll talk a little bit more about being a proactive videographer and what that means later, but if there's anything you could take away from this section, it's just that even a little bit of quality and camera movement goes a long way to really enhancing the way we perceive and view these videos. That said, that's it for this level of camera movement, so let's move on and talk about some of the more advanced camera movement techniques. Alright, so by now we've covered the basics of filming a solid dance video. By this point, you technically have all the knowledge you need to film a decent video. However, if you're looking to set up your videography a bit more and immerse the audience in a better visual, this is the level where you can really start distinguishing yourself as a videographer. Now, before we get into the exact techniques that we can use, let's first define the purpose of this set of camera movements. To put it simply, we are so used to watching dance videos in a straight-on manner. This is when the subject is in the center of frame, the horizon is completely level, and the camera is along the center line. There's absolutely nothing wrong about this. There's a reason why this type of camera framing is so popular. This is also the exact same mechanics that drive the level 1 camera movement from before. However, when we are looking to draw attention to specific parts of the choreography and really help elevate the visual experience, we need to create a visual perspective that's different from the one we are used to seeing. There's this really famous saying that conflict creates focus. This just really means that a visual experience that conflicts with one we are expecting or used to seeing really helps to focus our attention as viewers. So to create these moments of conflict, to create a disparity between what we're used to seeing and what we actually see in our dance covers, we need to create either tension or contrast. To put it simply, tension is any sort of extreme camera angle or framing that is meant to draw the viewer's attention. The best example of this is created through differences in camera angle relative to the horizon. For example, what if I create a tilt on this video? Maybe we go all the way and play this video upside down. Maybe we could do something funky like this. These are all examples of tension because, let's be real, this doesn't look right to you as the audience, doesn't it? So let's go ahead and fix that real quickly. There you go. Much better. But notice how during that brief moment, I captured your attention in a little bit more in any sort of shape or way or form. Maybe that made you feel uncomfortable to watch, or made you think, why the hell is the framing that way? And for a simple video or a tutorial like this sort of tension kind of really doesn't have any purpose, and it's so easy to have like a negative connotation of it. However, in dance videos, when it's used aesthetically, and I'll emphasize appropriately, it can be used to really catch your audience's attention. Take a look at this example of the new thing covered we filmed. So let's rewind here and watch that a little bit more intentionally. You can see right about here, tension is created, but it's done so stylistically. It matches the tension created naturally in the song when it pauses briefly. Not only that, the direction is also aesthetically pleasing because it's in the direction the camera moves later. However, one point about tension is that at some point in time, you have to release that tension. I can't make an entire video that is tilting on its axis, and at some point, you will stop watching that video because of how bad of a visual experience it is. It's the same reason why I can't just freely, flip this video upside down over and over again. Because while it will briefly catch your attention, at some point in time, you'll just stop watching because how bad of a visual experience it is. That's why at the end of the day, I like to call it tension. If you don't use it stylistically and resolve it eventually, bad things will happen. Alright, so the main difference between contrast and tension then is that contrast doesn't require this resolution, at least not nearly as quickly as tension. Whenever I use techniques that create contrast, I could do it for a while and it'll still look, well, pretty good to the viewer. Take this example, like another section from the new thing cover. Notice how I create contrast to your viewing experience because, well, I'm kind of just running around in a circle and showing you so many different perspectives. Yet, it's not nearly as distracted as, like keeping the camera very tilted. In the end, really knowing what is the difference between contrast and tension isn't that important, guys. Just know that we use both of them to capture the audience's attention even more in our videos. Again, my style of video production is to balance the dancers and the audience's needs. At the end of the day, I think it is my job to create a great visual experience that captivates and motivates the audience to, leave and see the video as being like, oh my god, that was awesome to see. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the first technique we will be using to create tension and contrast. We kinda already started talking about this, but one technique that we can use as videographers is angular movement. As mentioned before, this just means that instead of keeping, the camera level to the horizon, we are just shifting our camera angle to create some really unique visual perspectives. Often, when we are using angular movement, we aren't just using it in, one direction. Oftentimes, we are swinging the camera back and forth about the horizon to get some really interesting visual shots. You can see in the background here, I am playing Anti-Fragile and how throughout this part of the music video, there's a lot of angular movement back and forth around the pivot axis. I personally think that, it kind of enhances the visual experience a little bit more and it helps raise interest that, captures our attention in the audience. Now, there are two key things about angular movement that we have to keep in mind. First of all, the amount and the speed of the angular movement is often closely related to the intensity of the song you're covering. For example, something like, Anti-Fragile or Nude Thing, these are both really intense and high energy songs. You want to match that energy by doing some very fast and strong angular movements. However, for something like DM by Promise9, for example, right? A much slower song, you want to have a more smooth and slower angular movement to complement the choreography well. And as a last note about this technique, it is very important to use it intentionally and a little bit more scarcely. As I talked about earlier, you can only do this for so long before it gets a little disorienting, and at some point, the audience will be, looking away from the image. At some point, you need to have go back to like a level and correct image, if that kind of makes sense. However, when used correctly, you can have a great impact on the visual experience, as we mentioned before. Take a look at this section of Maniac by Stray Kids, for example. Let me know what you think. Alright, so something else that we can change about our image to create tension or contrast are high and low perspectives. You may have heard this as something like a high angle or a low angle perspective, or something similar to that. The point is that for the most part, we are so used to seeing images at one height, where the camera is at one height throughout the video, and by changing where the camera is relative to the ground, we can create many different visual perspectives than we are used to. Now, usually when we are thinking about using high and low perspectives, we are also talking about tilting the camera in some way, shape, or form. Whenever we are using a high perspective, we want to have our camera tilted down towards the subject. On the other hand, whenever we are using a low perspective, we want to have our camera tilted up and towards the subject. Now, this creates two separate visual effects. When we are using a low angle and pointing upwards towards our subject, we can make the subject look much bigger within our frame. I like to call this something like the power shot or a hero shot because it makes our subject look like they are towering over us as a viewer. And this is really great for accentuating really powerful or important parts of a dance. Take a look at this video, for example. Now, using the high angle has an opposite effect. In this case, we see that our subjects look super small within the frame. That's usually not something we're actually wanting to do for the most part. However, I'll admit that's really great for showing things like formations. So if you have a dance cover that has a lot of people in it, or you really just want to show off the blocking and the formations that you guys have in your choreography, maybe consider using more high angle shots. Alright, now I know that I mentioned earlier that whenever we're using high and low perspectives, you're also tilting the camera towards the subject. However, I kind of lied to you back there. This really isn't a necessity. You can have vertical movement of the camera without using any sort of tilt. You can see in the background, I am playing a video of NMix, and throughout it, the camera person uses a lot of vertical movement to complement the vertical movement of the choreography itself. However, they aren't really tilting the camera that much. The only thing about not tilting the camera, however, is that you don't really get as much of that perspective shift. That is, when you use a low angle, your subjects aren't as towering and powerful. And similarly, when you use a high angle, your subjects don't look nearly as small. So at the end of the day, the choice is yours to make as a videographer to see which version of this high or low angle movement really complements the dance better. Feel free to try out a bunch of different techniques and a different perspective. That way, you can get one that you're satisfied with at the end of the day. Alright, so let's shift gears here a little bit and talk about circular movement. In the level 1 camera movement, we talked about earlier how, moving horizontally left or right to keep center within the frame. Circular movement is different for a couple of reasons. First of all, rather than moving laterally left or right, you as a videographer are rotating in a circle around a pivot point. The best visualization I could think of it is like a planet's orbit. You as a videographer are like the Earth who is orbiting around your subject, which, in this analogy would be the sun. Now, unlike horizontal motion from earlier, your pivot point, your sun, your subject, whatever you want to call it, doesn't have to be in the center. It could be someone who is off to the side, like in this video, sneakers. Another cool effect that we can create is pivoting side to side. This is really great when you have a subject or a point of interest that is moving very quickly across a frame. Take a look at this section of the Anti-Fragile cover, for example. Now, I think that this example from Anti-Fragile is great for another reason. One of my favorite ways to use circular motion is when you have some sort of, line formation. Rather than going back and forth, pivoting in the same direction of the line really helps accentuate the depth of the dancers and the formation in general. I don't know about you guys, but having this visual that allows us to, experience the formation better is always a more interesting way to watch these videos, at least for me. Hopefully you guys can feel the same way. Anyways, I just want to mention two last things about circular motion before we head on to our next technique. First of all, circular motion is really great for establishing a shifting center line. You can see how in the introduction for New Thing, we have a shift in our center line using circular motion, and that creates some sort of contrast that really helps to draw our attention. Take a look closely here. The last thing I want to mention about circular motion is, well, just that, moving around in circles. Sometimes it's just really hard to complement the dance choreography well through simple back and forth movements. However, something that you can do then is literally move in a circle about the center line. You want to do this in a long and continuous cut. That way we have a motion that makes sense to our audience and helps keep our attention throughout the circular motion. This is something I use again doing the new thing cover, which is what you're seeing right now. We can compare that to the dance practice video of that same action of the dance. Again, I'm not saying that this is bad in any way or, this is a bad way to film a dance video. But when we compare these two different covers, I personally think that one of them is much more interesting than the other. What do you guys think? Alright, so we are almost done here with this section of the video, so hang in there with me. Another cool concept that I want to tell you about is something I call hide and reveal. The idea behind this is simple. Rather than showing everyone in the formation at once, you hide some people in the formation, largely by zooming way into the center, and during your movement, you reveal people on the outer edges of the formation. Let's take a look at this concept through this example video, which is the practice video to Money by Lisa. Alright, so right before we play the video, I just want you guys to know how many dancers we see. At the moment, we only know about 7 dancers, the 6 backup dancers to the sides and Lisa. So let's keep watching with that in mind. Do you guys notice how the camera person revealed everyone else during that shot? Doing the normal motion of following Lisa back and forth, you can see how they took that, just little extra step to go back a little faster and use that as a way to reveal the rest of the backup dancers. I love the fact that it seems like, the dancers are kind of like flying in from the sides, already in action. I know it's really simple on the surface, but I don't know, I just love a small visual thing like that. Now, I think another aspect of hide and reveal is that we can do it from the opposite end as well. We can start off with a wide shot and then pan into the subject as they are revealed. The only thing about this is that this requires the choreography itself to hide and reveal the main subject or an upcoming subject. Since we are starting off with a wide shot where it's really easy to get everyone in the frame, we need to have a choreography blocking people intentionally as well. And so when we complement the reveal of that person with our camera movement, we also can get a very cool effect. Take a look at the beginning of the actual performance video for Money and see whether you can notice that taking place. If you want to take a step further as well, try to think about how the lighting changes also accentuate this. It's the end of the month and the weekend. I'ma spend this track. Hopefully you guys caught that. Anyways, for the last concept we'll be going over for this section, I want to talk about contradictory movement. Now, in the level 1 camera motion section, we talked about how, when the center goes forward, you want to mirror that by going backwards as the camera person. Now, contradictory movement is when we do the exact opposite. Rather than going backwards and following the center's movement, in this case, we'll zoom in as the camera person. This creates a super awesome zoom in effect that makes the action, really powerful in my opinion. Let's take a look at that through an example here. Alright, so right before I play the video, I just want you guys to pay close attention to both the dancers and the camera's movements right as we end the chorus. Alright, did you guys notice that? Right as the chorus ends, the dancers move forward towards the camera, but the camera zooms forward. And so because we have these contradictory movement and both people are moving towards each other, you get a really and powerful zoom. Let's watch that again. Anyways, with that being said, that concludes this section on level 2 camera movement. I hope that throughout this section, you are able to see, some small way we can create tension and contrast to really help draw our attention as an audience. At this point, truth be told, you actually have everything you need to make a really awesome dance video. However, I must say at the end of the day, your job as a videographer is, not knowing how we create these effects, but when to use them. This takes some practice, of course, but don't worry if you struggle a bit at first. I struggled a heck a lot at first. I mean, take a look at some of my first dance covers, you'll see a lot of things I didn't do very well. But with that being said, if you practice and try to really think intentionally, like when and how you use these techniques, I guarantee you that you'll be well on your way to create awesome dance videos of your own. However, if you want to really set the bar to the max for your videos, that's where we're going to introduce this next level of camera movement.